The dust storm hit the ranch like the devil's own fury, turning the afternoon sky black as coal tar. Samuel Blackwater stood on his porch, watching the wall of dirt roll across the prairie, swallowing everything in its path. He'd seen plenty of storms in his 38 years, but this one had teeth. He pulled his bandana up over his nose and squinted through the growing darkness. The cattle were already huddled against the barn, their heads low. His horses whinnied nervously in their stalls. Everything that could move was seeking shelter, and everything that couldn't was about to get buried. That's when he saw them 3 figures struggling against the wind, barely visible through the churning dust. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks. Nobody with sense would be caught out in weather like this, but there they were, bent nearly double, pushing forward step by painful step. The lead figure was dragging something, someone was leading an animal. As they drew closer, Samuel could make out a woman, her skirts whipping around her legs, one arm shielding her face while the other gripped a rope. Behind her, 2 small shapes clung to each other, the larger one trying to shelter the smaller. Children. There were children out in this hell. Samuel cursed under his breath and stepped off the porch. The wind nearly knocked him sideways, but he leaned into it and made his way toward them. The woman saw him coming and stopped, swaying on her feet. When he got close enough to see her face through the dust, he saw exhaustion etched in every line, desperation in her eyes. "Please!" she shouted over the roaring wind. "My children!" "Get inside!" Samuel barked, grabbing her arm to steady her. "Barn's closer! Move!" He herded them toward the barn, the children stumbling between them. The animal she was leading turned out to be a goat, scrawny and stubborn, digging its hooves into the dirt with every step. Samuel wanted to leave the cursed thing, but the woman wouldn't let go of the rope. They burst through the barn doors just as the worst of the storm hit. Samuel slammed the doors shut and dropped the heavy bar across them. The building groaned under the assault, but it would hold. He'd built it to last. In the relative quiet of the barn, lit by a single lantern swaying from a beam, Samuel got his first good look at his unexpected guests. The woman was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 25. With auburn hair escaping from beneath a dust-caked bonnet. Her dress, once blue, was now the color of dirt, torn at the hem. But it was her eyes that caught him, green as spring grass, fierce despite her obvious exhaustion. The children pressed against her skirts, a boy of perhaps 8 and a girl no more than 5. Both had their mother's coloring, their faces streaked with tears and dust. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice hoarse. "I thought we were done for." Samuel grunted, uncomfortable with gratitude. "What in tarnation were you doing out there? Don't you know a storm's coming when you see one?" Her chin lifted slightly. "We've been walking since yesterday. Didn't have much choice in the matter." He looked at them more closely, really looked. No wagon, no horses, no supplies except what the woman carried in a cloth bundle. Just them and that sorry excuse for a goat, travelers who'd lost everything, or runners from something worse. "My name's Clara," she said when he didn't respond. "Clara Morrison. These are my children, James and little Emma." Samuel nodded curtly. "Samuel Blackwater. This is my place." The goat bleated pitifully, drawing his attention. It was a sorry creature, ribs showing through its dusty hide, one horn broken, but something about it nagged at him, something familiar he couldn't quite place. "Mr. Blackwater," Clara began, and he heard the desperation creeping back into her voice. "I know we're strangers, and you've already done more than most would, but my children, they need shelter, just until the storm passes. I can pay." She fumbled with the rope, pushing the goat forward. "She's all we have left, but she's yours if you'll let us stay. She gives good milk when she's fed proper, and—" "You're trying to trade me a goat." Samuel's voice came out harsher than he intended. The absurdity of it, this woman offering her last possession for a few hours of shelter. Clara's shoulders straightened. "I'm trying to keep my children alive. Mr. Blackwater, I'll trade whatever I have to. The boy James stepped forward, small fists clenched. You don't have to be mean to her. We didn't want to come here anyway. James, Clara warned. But Samuel was already turning away, running a hand through his dust-laden hair. He walked to where his horses stood, watching the newcomers with interest. The familiar smell of hay and horseflesh calmed him, gave him a moment to think. 10 years he'd lived alone on this ranch. 10 years of silence except for the wind and the cattle. He'd chosen this life, embraced it even. After everything went to hell. He didn't need complications, especially not in the form of a desperate woman and 2 scared kids. But when he turned back, the little girl Emma was crying silently, her face buried in her mother's skirts. The sight of it hit him like a physical blow, bringing back memories he'd buried deeper than any dust storm could reach. The house would be more comfortable, he heard himself saying, especially for the young ones. Clara's eyes widened. Mr. Blackwater, Storm like this could last days, he continued, not meeting her gaze. Barn's no place for children. You can keep your goat. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Something about that goat was still bothering him. He walked back to where it stood, trembling from exhaustion. Kneeling, he examined it more closely, his calloused fingers finding old scars, the particular set of its ears. And then, his blood ran cold. There, burned into the goat's left flank, faint but unmistakable, was a brand. Not just any brand, his father's brand. The Blackwater bee, with the distinctive curl at the bottom, the one that had marked their livestock for 3 generations. Where did you get this goat? His voice came out rough, dangerous. Clara stepped back, pulling her children with her. My husband traded for her, years ago. Why? What's wrong? Samuel stood slowly, his mind racing. His father's herd had been scattered to the wind after the ranch burned, sold off or stolen. He'd spent years tracking down what he could, rebuilding. But the goats, they'd all been lost. Every last one. This goat, he said carefully, bears my family's mark. Clara's face went white. I didn't know. I swear to you, Mr. Blackwater, we came by her honestly. My husband, her voice broke. He passed 3 weeks ago. The fever took him. The goat's all he left us. Samuel studied her face, looking for deception. Found none. Just a woman at the end of her rope, trying to protect her children with the fierce desperation of a cornered animal. Outside, the storm raged on, shaking the barn walls. Inside, the silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions and the weight of the past. Finally, Samuel sighed. Come on, then. Let's get you to the house before this gets any worse. He led them back into the storm, one hand on the rope Clara had tied around her waist, the other guiding the children. The goat followed on its lead, head down, pushing through the wind. The house was only 50 yards away, but it might as well have been 50 miles. They fought for every step, the dust scouring any exposed skin, filling their lungs with grit. When they finally stumbled through his front door, Samuel slammed it shut and leaned against it, breathing hard. The house felt strange with other people in it, their presence filling up spaces that had been empty too long. Clara was looking around, taking in the sparse furnishings, the layer of dust on everything except his chair by the fireplace and the kitchen table. A woman's touch had been absent here for a long time, and it showed. Thank you, she said simply. We won't be any trouble. Samuel almost laughed at that. They were already trouble. The moment he'd seen his father's brand on that goat, he'd known it. The past had a way of finding you, no matter how far you ran or how deep you buried it. But looking at those children, shivering and scared, looking at their mother trying so hard to be strong, he knew he couldn't turn them out. Not into that storm. Not when they were connected to his family, however distantly, through that skinny goat. There's a room upstairs, he said gruffly. Was my He stopped, cleared his throat. It's empty now. You and the children can use it. I'll bring up some blankets. As Clara herded her children toward the stairs, murmuring reassurances, Samuel remained by the door, listening to the storm batter his home. He'd built these walls strong, but he wondered if they were strong enough for what was coming. Because that goat didn't just carry his family's brand. It carried their legacy, their history, maybe even their secrets. And this woman and her children, whether they knew it or not, had just brought all of it right to his doorstep. The morning light filtered weakly through the dust-caked windows, painting the kitchen in shades of brown and amber. Samuel had been up since before dawn, his usual time, but instead of the familiar silence, he could hear footsteps overhead, careful, trying not to disturb. He was frying bacon when Clara appeared in the doorway, her hair hastily pinned up, yesterday's dust mostly brushed from her dress. She hesitated, clearly unsure of her welcome in his kitchen. "Coffee's on the stove," he said without turning around. "Cups are in the cabinet." "Thank you." She moved quietly, pouring herself a cup and wrapping her hands around it like it was precious. The storm, still blowing, might be another day or two before it clears. She nodded, sipping the bitter brew. Samuel could feel her watching him, working up to something. He kept his attention on the bacon, letting her find her words. "About the goat," she finally said. "I need to explain." "No need." He flipped the bacon onto a plate. "Your husband traded for her fair and square. You said, that's enough." "But it's not." Her voice carried a firmness that made him look up. "You recognize that brand. It means something to you. I can see it in your face." Samuel set the plate down harder than necessary. "Lot of brands out there. Doesn't mean—" Mr. Blackwater." She stepped closer, those green eyes direct and unflinching. "My husband used to say that the only thing worse than a lie is a truth left unspoken. That goat came from a place called Willow Creek, from a man named Thomas Blackwater. Your father—" The name hit him like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. "My father's dead, 10 years now." "I know," Clara said softly. "My husband was there. At the end." Samuel's head snapped up. "What?" She set down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. "Please, sit down. Let me tell you what I know. What my Daniel told me before he died." Against his better judgment, Samuel sat. Clara settled across from him, gathering her thoughts. "My husband wasn't from these parts originally. He came west as a young man, looking for work. Found it at a ranch near Willow Creek, your father's ranch. He spoke of Thomas Blackwater often. Said he was a hard man but fair, treated his hands like family." Samuel's throat tightened. That sounded like his father. "All right. Tough as leather but loyal to his bones." "Daniel was there the night of the fire," Clara continued, her voice dropping. "The night your father died." "He was murdered." The words came out harsh, bitter. "Someone set that fire deliberate. Burned the house, the barn, everything. They never found who did it." Clara met his gaze steadily. "Daniel saw who did it." The kitchen went utterly still. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Samuel's voice, when it came, was dangerous quiet. He saw a group of men, Cattlemen's Association. He thought, though he couldn't be sure in the dark, they were after your father's water rights. Daniel tried to help, tried to get your father out, but the smoke—" She shook her head. "Your father gave him something before he died. Told him to keep it safe, keep it hidden. Said his boys would come looking one day." "Boys." Samuel stood abruptly, the chair scraping. "My brother William's been gone 15 years. Haven't heard from him since he lit out for California." "Your father never gave up hope William would return." Clara rose too, moving to the corner where her meager belongings sat. From the bottom of her cloth bundle, she withdrew something wrapped in oilcloth. "Daniel kept this all these years, even when times were hard, when we could have sold it. He wouldn't, said it was a trust. She handed him the package. Samuel's hands shook as he unwrapped it, revealing a leather journal, singed at the edges but intact. His father's journal. He'd know that careful script anywhere. But it was what fell out of the journal that stopped his heart, a daguerreotype of his family. Taken the year before William left. His father stern and proud. His mother beautiful in her Sunday best. William grinning like he had the world by the tail. And himself, younger and unmarked by loss. There's more, Clara said gently. The back pages. Your father wrote about the water rights. About the men threatening him. Names, dates, everything. Evidence. Samuel flipped to the back, scanning the entries. His father had known they were coming for him. Had prepared, documented everything. But why hadn't he run? Why hadn't he? The answer was in the final entry. My boys will need this land. It's their birthright, their legacy. I'll not be driven off by cowards and thieves. If they want Blackwater land, they'll have to go through me. Stubborn fool, Samuel whispered. But there was no heat in it, only grief, old and deep. Daniel wanted to find you, Clara continued, to return these things. But we were barely scraping by, couldn't afford to travel. Then he got sick. Her voice trailed off. I'm sorry, I should have found a way sooner. Samuel closed the journal carefully. Why didn't your husband come forward after the fire? Clara's laugh was bitter. A Mexican ranch hand's word against the Cattlemen's Association, he'd have been hanged for horse theft or shot for looking crosswise at someone. He did what he could. He saved what your father entrusted to him. And the goat? Your father gave her to Daniel that night. Said she was special last of a bloodline he'd been breeding for years. Hardy stock, survived drought and disease. Daniel bred her careful-like. Kept the line going. That one there, she's probably the last that carries the pure blood. Samuel looked through the window toward the barn where the scrawny goat sheltered. His father. Sentimental about his animals to the end. But then, the old man had always said that a ranch was more than land and water. It was the living things that made it whole. Your children, he said suddenly. Their father was Mexican. Clara's chin lifted defiantly. Half? His mother was Irish, like me. Does it matter? No, and surprised to find he meant it. Just wondering how they're taking to all this, being without him. Her defiance crumbled. James tries to be strong, thinks he's the man now. Emma just cries for her papa at night. I tell them he's watching from heaven, but... She wiped hastily at her eyes. I'm sorry. You don't need our troubles. Seems like our troubles are already tangled together. Samuel stood, moving to the stove. Best get some food in those children. Then we need to talk about what comes next. Next. He turned to face her, the journal still in his hand. This changes things. With these names, this evidence, there might be justice yet for my father. But it'll be dangerous. The men who killed him are still out there, still powerful. Then we'll leave. Clara said immediately. As soon as the storm clears, I won't put you in danger, not after your kindness. You misunderstand. Samuel's voice was grim. That goat out there, she's not just carrying my father's bloodline. According to territorial law, livestock bearing a registered brand belongs to that brand's owner unless sold or traded legal-like. Your husband saved her, raised her, but technically, he met her eyes. She's Blackwater property, which makes you and yours tied to Blackwater business. Clara paled. You take our goat, our only I'm saying, Samuel interrupted, that my father trusted yours enough to give him that goat, that journal. That makes your Daniel part of this story. And that makes you and those children under Blackwater protection. He paused, working through what he was about to say. You'll stay here, long as you need, long as it takes to see this through. Mr. Blackwater, we can't... Samuel, he corrected. And you can, those men who burned my father out, they're still out there, still taking what isn't theirs. Your husband kept faith with mine all these years. Least I can do is keep faith with his widow. Before Clara could respond, footsteps thundered on the stairs. James burst in, eyes wide with panic. "Mama Emma won't wake up. She's burning up something awful." Clara flew from the room, Samuel right behind her. They found the little girl tangled in blankets, her face flushed with fever, whimpering in her sleep. "How long?" Samuel demanded. "She was warm last night, but I thought it was just the dust and exhaustion." Clara's hands shook as she felt her daughter's forehead. "Oh, baby girl." Samuel had seen enough frontier fevers to know this could go bad fast. The nearest doctor was 2 days' ride in good weather. Impossible in this storm. "Get her cooled down," he ordered. "I'll fetch water and clean cloths." He turned to James, saw the boy fighting tears. "You help your mother. Can you do that?" James nodded fiercely, reminding Samuel painfully of another stubborn boy who'd tried too hard to be a man too young. As he gathered supplies, Samuel realized that whether he'd intended it or not, these people were now his responsibility. The storm had brought them to his door, but it was the past his father's legacy, written in journal pages and carried in the blood of a scrawny goat that would keep them here. And maybe, just maybe, that was what his father had intended all along. The fever held Emma in its grip for 2 days, 2 days of Clara's quiet prayers, of James fetching water without being asked, of Samuel pacing the floorboards like a caged wolf. The storm still raged outside, but inside the house, a different kind of tempest was brewing, one made of fear and fragile hope. Samuel found himself drawn repeatedly to the sick room. He'd tell himself he was just checking if Clara needed anything, but the truth was simpler and more complex. The sight of that small form fighting for breath reminded him too sharply of another sick bed, another child, another time when his prayers hadn't been enough. On the second night, when Clara swayed on her feet from exhaustion, he ordered her to rest. "I can't leave her," she protested, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "You're no good to her if you collapse." He pulled up the chair she had been occupying. "I'll watch her. Done it before." Clara studied his face, perhaps seeing something there he'd rather keep hidden. "You had children?" "No." The word came out too sharp. He softened his tone. "My brother, when he was about her age, scarlet fever. Our mother nursed him through it, taught me what to do." She nodded slowly, too tired to pursue it further. "If she wakes, there's willow bark tea on the bureau. Just a sip at a time." After she left, Samuel settled in beside the bed. Emma's breathing was shallow but steady, her small face still flushed but not quite as burning hot as before. Progress, maybe, or just wishful thinking. He dipped a cloth in the basin, wringing it carefully before laying it across her forehead. The simple action brought back a flood of memories, his mother's gentle hands, the smell of her lavender water, the way she'd hum old hymns while tending the sick. "Your grandma would have known what to do," he told the sleeping child. She had a way with healing, learned it from her mother, who learned it from the Indians. Knowledge passed down, woman to woman, like recipes or quilt patterns. Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake. Samuel continued talking, his voice low and steady. Sometimes that helped. His mother had said, "Let them know they're not alone." This land's been hard on children, always has been, but the strong ones, they make it through, grow up tough as mesquite, deep-rooted as cottonwoods. He refreshed the cloth. "You'll be one of the strong ones. Can tell by looking at you. Got your mama's spine." The wind howled around the eaves, and somewhere in the house, a board creaked. Samuel had grown so used to the sounds of his empty home that these new noises, Clara moving in her room, James's restless turning, felt foreign and familiar all at once. Around midnight, James appeared in the doorway, a small ghost in his nightshirt. "Is she better?" "Come see for yourself." The boy crept closer, his face anxious. Samuel watched him take his sister's hand, so gentle for a child trying so hard to be grown. She's cooler, James observed. Fever's breaking. I think, good sign. James nodded solemnly, then surprised Samuel by asking, "Are you really going to let us stay? Mama thinks you might change your mind when the storm's done." Samuel considered his answer carefully. "Your mama told you about the goat, about my PA. Said the goat belonged to your family once. Said Papa Daniel helped your PA." James's young face was troubled. "Does that make us beholden to you?" Beholden. Such an old-fashioned word for a boy to use. But then, children grew up fast out here. "Makes us connected," Samuel said finally. "Your papa kept faith with mine. That matters out here. Mama says we can't take charity." "Not charity. You'll work for your keep, once you're able. Ranch needs hands, even small ones. And your mama," he paused, realizing he'd been thinking about this more than he'd admitted. "Place could use a woman's touch. Been bachelor quarters too long." James studied him with eyes too knowing for his years. "You lonely, Mr. Samuel?" The question hit like a sucker punch. Samuel turned back to Emma, adjusting her blankets unnecessarily. "Get on back to bed, boy. Your mama finds you up. She'll have both our hides." But James lingered. "Papa used to say lonely was just another word for waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For whatever God's sending your way." The boy shrugged. "Never understood it much myself." After James padded back to bed, Samuel sat in the darkness, thinking about Daniel Morrison, a man he'd never met but who'd shaped his life nonetheless. What kind of man keeps another man's secrets for 10 years? What kind of man raises another man's goat like a trust fund? The kind Clara would marry, apparently. The kind who'd raise a boy to speak of obligation and faith like they were everyday things. Near dawn, Emma's eyes fluttered open. Samuel leaned forward, relief flooding through him when he saw clarity there instead of fever haze. "Hey there, little one," he said softly. "You gave us quite a scare." She blinked at him, confused. "You're not Papa?" "No, I'm Samuel. You're in my house. Remember you and your mama and James." "The storm man," she whispered. "Mama said you saved us from the storm." "Storm saved itself. I just opened the door." She studied him with that unnerving directness children had. "Are you sad?" "What makes you ask that?" "Your eyes, they look like Mama's when she thinks we're not watching." Samuel had no answer for that. Instead, he offered her a sip of water, supporting her small head with practiced care. "Think you could manage some broth? Need to get your strength back." She nodded, then asked, "Is Buttercup safe?" "A buttercup?" "Our goat. Papa said she was special." "She's in the barn, probably complaining about the accommodations." He helped her sit up against the pillows. "That what you call her Buttercup?" "Papa named her, said she was yellow as buttercups when she was born." Emma's face crumpled suddenly. "I miss Papa." "I know." Samuel's hand hovered uncertainly before settling gently on her hair. "Missing folks is hard, but you know what? Your Papa left you something better than his presence. He left you his stories, his lessons, and he left you that goat." "Buttercup's just a goat. No such thing as just anything on a ranch. Everything's connected. That goat carries bloodlines going back generations. Your Papa knew that, valued it, kept it safe for you." Emma considered this with a seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. "Like a treasure." "Exactly like a treasure. One that gives milk." That earned him a tiny smile. "Papa said Mr. Blackwater gave her to him." "Was that your Papa?" "It was." "Then we're connected," she said, echoing his earlier words to James. "Like family." The simple certainty in her voice shook something loose in Samuel's chest. Before he could respond, Clara appeared in the doorway, her face lighting up when she saw Emma awake. "Oh, thank God!" She rushed to the bed, gathering her daughter close, over Emma's head. Her eyes met Samuel's, bright with tears and gratitude. "Thank you." "Fever broke on its own. I just sat with her." "You did more than that." Clara smoothed Emma's hair. James told me what you said, about us staying. Meant it. We'll earn our keep. I know you will. He stood, suddenly feeling like an intruder in this moment of maternal relief. I'll get that broth warming. But Clara caught his sleeve as he passed. Samuel, your father would be proud of the man you've become. He couldn't speak past the sudden tightness in his throat, so he just nodded and escaped to the kitchen. As he stirred the pot of broth he'd kept simmering all night, he could hear Clara singing softly to Emma, some Irish lullaby that made the lonely kitchen feel less empty. The storm was finally breaking, weak sunlight fighting through the dust. Soon the world outside would re-emerge, demanding attention. There'd be damage to assess, cattle to find, work to be done, and somewhere out there, the men who'd killed his father still lived their lives, unpunished. But for now, in this moment, his house held something it hadn't in 10 years, the sound of a family. Not his family, not yet, maybe not ever, but family nonetheless. Samuel ladled broth into a bowl, listening to Emma's weak giggle at something her mother said. His father had trusted Daniel Morrison with more than just a goat and a journal. He'd trusted him with a future, a chance at justice, a possibility of redemption. And Daniel, in turn, had sent his family here, to this place of ghosts and dust and solitude. Samuel couldn't help but wonder if both men had known exactly what they were doing. If this moment, him serving broth to a sick child while her mother sang and her brother kept watch, was somehow part of a plan set in motion years ago. Papa used to say lonely was just another word for waiting, James had said. Maybe the boy was wiser than his years. Maybe they all were, because Samuel was beginning to suspect that his long wait might finally be over. The storm's aftermath revealed a changed landscape. Fence posts lay scattered like matchsticks. The chicken coop had lost half its roof, and red dirt had drifted against the barn doors 3 feet high. But the house stood firm, and the livestock had survived. Samuel counted it a victory. He was clearing debris from the well when Clara found him. Emma's small hand clutched in hers. The child looked pale but steady on her feet, wrapped in one of his old blankets. She insisted on seeing Buttercup, Clara explained, a mix of exasperation and fondness in her voice. Barn's a mess, Samuel warned, but he was already leading the way. Inside, the goat stood placidly in her makeshift stall, chewing cud and looking supremely unbothered by the chaos around her. Emma broke free from her mother, running to wrap her arms around the goat's neck. Careful, little one, Clara called, but Samuel noticed she was smiling. That goat's tougher than she looks, he said, then found himself really looking at the animal for the first time since the storm. Despite her rough appearance, there was something in her bearing, the set of her head, the alert eyes. Your Daniel knew his livestock. He was proud of her lineage, used to talk about it for hours. Clara's voice softened with memory. Said Mr. Blackwater, your father had bred them special. Something about Spanish stock crossed with Tennessee milk goats. Samuel moved closer, running his hand along the goat's back. His father had indeed been working on a special line, trying to create goats that could thrive in the harsh territory while still producing good milk. He'd thought all that work lost in the fire. There should be papers, he said suddenly. Registration papers, breeding records. Did Daniel— Yes, Clara's face lit up. I'd forgotten. They're in the bottom of my trunk, wrapped in oilskin. Daniel said they were important, made me promise to keep them safe. They returned to the house, Emma reluctantly leaving Buttercup with promises to return with treats. Clara disappeared upstairs and came back carrying a packet of papers, yellowed with age but intact. Samuel spread them on the kitchen table, his heart racing as he recognized his father's meticulous handwriting. Here was the complete genealogy of the Blackwater goat line, going back 15 years. Notes on breeding, milk production, disease resistance. His father's life work, preserved by a Mexican ranch hand who'd understood its value. Look at this, he breathed, pointing to an entry. Buttercup's grandmother. Father wrote she gave milk through the worst drought in 20 years when the cattle were dropping dead. Said her line could save a ranch in hard times. James had wandered in, drawn by the excitement in their voices. Is that why they burned your PA out over goats? No, son, Samuel replied, his voice hardening. They wanted the water rights. The goats were just incidental damage. He turned to a page near the back and froze. There, in his father's careful script, was something he'd never expected to see. Partnership agreement Thomas Blackwater and William Blackwater, equal shares in all livestock and increase thereof. William, Clara read over his shoulder. Your brother, Samuel nodded, unable to speak. His brother had left before this was written, but their father had still included him, still hoped he'd return. There's more, Clara said gently, turning the page. A letter. Samuel recognized the handwriting immediately looser, more careless than their father's. William's hand. Dear Father, he read aloud. I know I've been a disappointment, leaving like I did, but I've made something of myself out here in California. Got married, her name's Mary. And you'd like her. She's got your stubborn streak. We've got a boy now. Thomas, after you. I'm sending this with a man I trust, Daniel Morrison, who's heading back to Texas. If you're willing, I'd like to come home, make things right. The gold's played out, and I miss the ranch. I miss you. Your son, William. The date at the bottom was 3 weeks before the fire. Samuel's hands trembled as he set the letter down. He was coming home. William was coming home, and Father never told me. Maybe he wanted to be sure, Clara offered. Maybe he didn't want to get your hopes up. Or maybe, Samuel said bitterly, he knew those vultures were closing in and didn't want William riding into danger. Emma had climbed onto Clara's lap, sensing the tension. Why are you sad, Mr. Samuel? He looked at the child, at her direct gaze so like her mother's. Sometimes families lose each other. Sometimes they don't find their way back. But sometimes they do, Emma said with 5-year-old certainty. Mama found you, and you have Buttercup, and that's almost like finding family. Out of the mouths of babes. Samuel felt Clara's eyes on him, but couldn't meet them. Instead, he carefully folded the letters and papers. We should check the range, he said abruptly. See how many cattle weathered the storm? But Clara wasn't letting him retreat. Samuel, wait. She set Emma down, sending her to play with James. When they were alone, she stepped closer. This letter changes things. Your brother might still be out there. His son, your nephew, would be about James's age now. It's been 10 years. If William wanted to come home, how would he know there was a home to come to for all he knows? You're dead too. The thought hadn't occurred to him. He'd been so caught up in his own grief, his own isolation. He'd never considered that William might be grieving too, might think himself alone in the world. I wouldn't know where to start looking. The letter mentions California, a wife named Mary. It's something... Clara's voice was gentle but insistent. Your father kept hoping. Don't you think you owe it to him to at least try? Samuel walked to the window, looking out at his land, his and William's land. According to those papers, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere out there, his brother might be watching the same sunset, thinking of home. After we get the ranch back in order, he heard himself say. After I figure out what to do about the men who killed our father, then maybe... He felt Clara's hand on his arm, warm and reassuring. You're not alone in this anymore. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. The word we hung in the air between them, full of possibility and promise. Samuel had lived so long as I that he'd forgotten how we felt. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. You're Daniel, he said slowly. He must have been quite a man, to keep all this safe, to understand its importance. He was. Clara's smile was sad but proud. He used to say that loyalty was the only currency worth a damn out here, that a man's word was his bond, even after death. He was right. Samuel turned from the window, decision crystallizing. Tomorrow, we start putting this place fully to rights. James is old enough to help with the stock. You'll take over the house management, it needs it, and we'll start making inquiries about William. And the men who killed your father. Samuel's face hardened. They'll keep, for now. But this journal, these papers, when the time comes, we'll have what we need. Clara nodded, understanding that vengeance was a dish best served cold, especially when children were involved. That evening, as they shared a simple meal of beans and cornbread, Samuel found himself really looking at the people around his table. James, earnestly discussing which horses had the best temperament. Emma, chattering about Buttercup's supposed conversations. Clara, quietly managing her children while shooting him occasional glances that made his collar feel tight. This morning he'd been a man alone with his ghosts. Tonight he had... what? Not a family. Not yet, but something, a purpose beyond mere survival. A reason to make the ranch more than just a monument to loss. After the children were in bed, he and Clara sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear post-storm sky. The silence between them was comfortable now, not weighted with things unsaid. Daniel would have liked you, Clara said eventually. He admired men who kept their word. Seems I have him to thank for more than just preserving papers. She turned to look at him. What do you mean? Samuel chose his words carefully. If he hadn't saved that goat, kept those documents, you'd never have come here. That storm would have passed by like all the others. And I'd still be... He gestured vaguely at the empty land. Waiting. He remembered James's words. Maybe, or maybe just existing. Clara stood, smoothing her skirts. Well, Mr. Blackwater, seems like the waiting's over for both of us? She paused at the door. Thank you, for Emma, for taking us in, for everything. After she went inside, Samuel remained on the porch, breathing in the clean night air. Tomorrow would bring work and worry, decisions about the future and reckonings with the past. But tonight, for the first time in 10 years, his house felt like a home. All because of a storm, a goat, and a woman who wouldn't let her children die in the dust. His father would have called it providence. Daniel Morrison might have called it loyalty paying forward. Samuel just called it a beginning. The weeks following the storm fell into a rhythm that surprised Samuel with its rightness. Mornings began with Clara's quiet movements in the kitchen, the smell of coffee and biscuits replacing the stale emptiness he'd grown accustomed to. James shadowed him during the day's work, eager and attentive, while Emma turned the house into her domain, Buttercup often trailing behind her like a devoted dog. It was during the third week that Samuel made his proposition. They were sitting down to supper venison stew that Clara had somehow made seem like a feast when he cleared his throat. Been thinking, he began, then stopped, uncharacteristically nervous. This arrangement, you working for room and board, it's not right. Clara's hand stilled on her spoon. If we're not earning our keep. That's not what I mean. He pushed his plate aside, needing his hands free to gesture. You've done more for this place in 3 weeks than I managed in 3 years. House feels alive again, and James here is turning into a real hand. The boy sat up straighter, pride shining in his eyes. What I'm saying is, Samuel continued, I'd like to make it official. Partners. You and the children stay on permanent. Help run the ranch. Split the profits fair and square. The silence stretched long enough that Samuel wondered if he'd overstepped. Then Clara spoke, her voice careful. Why would you do that? You barely know us. Know enough. He met her gaze steadily. Know you're honest. Know you work hard. Know those children need a home and this place needs a family. Seems like a fair trade. Mama, James burst out. We could stay, we could... Hush, Clara said gently. But her eyes never left Samuel's face. Partners means equal say in decisions, equal responsibility. You sure you want that? Been making decisions alone for 10 years. Wouldn't mind sharing the load. She studied him for a long moment, and he had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing more than he meant to show. Finally, she nodded. All right, partners, but we do this proper written agreement, witnessed, and the children keep the Morrison name. Of course. He hadn't expected the surge of relief he felt. We'll ride to town end of the week, see the lawyer. Emma, who'd been following the conversation with intense concentration, suddenly asked, Does this mean Buttercup can sleep in my room? No, Samuel and Clara said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed the first real laugh he'd had in years. Later that evening, after the children were abed, he found Clara on the porch, mending one of James's shirts by lamplight. He settled into the other chair, comfortable with the domestic scene in a way that should have been alarming. You didn't ask about profits, he observed. Most folks would want to know what they're signing on for. Her needle paused. I've seen how you treat your stock, how you maintain the land. A man who takes care like that isn't running a failing operation. Besides, she added with a slight smile, we came here with nothing but a goat. Anything is profit from where we started. About that goat, Samuel said, Been thinking we should expand the herd. Your Buttercup in my father's bloodline could build something special. Daniel would have liked that. Her voice was soft with memory. He used to say the future was in diversification. Cattle for meat, goats for milk and cheese, maybe even sheep for wool. Man had vision. He did. She set down her mending, looking out at the darkened land. Samuel, can I ask you something? He nodded, though she wasn't looking at him. That room upstairs, the one we're in, it wasn't your brother's, was it? The question hit unexpected places. No, he said quietly. Was meant for someone else. She turned to him then, waiting. He'd kept this locked away so long, but somehow, in the darkness with her patient presence, the words came easier. Her name was Margaret. We were engaged, planning to marry that fall. She was staying with her folks in town when the fever came through. Took her in 3 days. He paused, remembering. After that, after Pa died, didn't see much point in a family room. I'm sorry. Long time ago. But it wasn't. Not really. Grief didn't follow calendar time. She would have liked you. Same kind of strength. Quiet-like, but steel underneath. They sat in companionable silence until Clara spoke again. We've both lost people. Both had our lives torn up. Maybe that's why this works. We're not trying to replace what was. We're building something new. Before he could respond, the sound of horses approaching made them both tense. Samuel was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. Get inside. Lock the door. But Clara didn't move. 3 riders, she said calmly. Coming slow, not trying to hide. He admired her nerve even as he wished she'd listen. The riders came into view in the moonlight, 2 men and a woman, travel-worn but well-mounted. Hello, the house, one of the men called. Looking for Samuel Blackwater. Samuel stepped to the porch rail, rifle visible but not raised. You found him. State your business. The lead rider pushed back his hat, and Samuel's heart stopped. Even in the poor light, even after 15 years, he knew that face. Hello, little brother, William said. I've come home. The world tilted. Samuel gripped the porch rail, the rifle forgotten. William? His brother dismounted slowly, like he was approaching a spooked horse. Got word about Pa, about the fire. Took me years to save enough to come back, then more years to work up the courage. He paused at the bottom of the porch steps. I'm sorry, Sam. Sorry I wasn't here. Sorry for everything. Samuel found his voice. Who told you? Man named Garrett in San Antonio. Said he'd bought some Blackwater cattle. Wondered if I was kin. William's voice was rough with emotion. "When I told him I was Thomas's son, he told me about Pa, about the ranch, said you were still here, still fighting." The woman had dismounted too, helping a boy down from his horse. Mary and young Thomas, Samuel realized. His sister-in-law and nephew, here in the flesh like conjured spirits. "You must be Clara," William said, noticing her for the first time. "Garrett mentioned Sam had married, had a family now." "Oh, we're not," Clara began, but Samuel interrupted. "This is Clara Morrison. She and her children are my partners in the ranch." He stressed the word partners, but knew how it must sound. Didn't care. "Clara, this is my brother William." The reunion that followed was awkward and wonderful by turns. William's wife Mary was indeed like their father, strong-willed and direct, with kind eyes that missed nothing. Young Thomas, 12 years old and the spitting image of William at that age, stared around with naked curiosity. They crowded into the kitchen, Clara somehow producing coffee and food for the travelers, while Samuel and William circled each other like wary dogs, wanting to bridge the years but not knowing how. It was James who broke the tension. He'd crept downstairs, drawn by voices, and stood in the doorway, wide-eyed. "Are you really Mr. Samuel's brother?" William smiled, and suddenly he was the boy Samuel remembered, the one who could charm birds from trees. "I am, and who might you be?" "James Morrison. Sir, I help Mr. Samuel with the horses." "Morrison." William's eyes sharpened. "Any kin to Daniel Morrison?" Clara stepped forward. "My late husband, how did you—" "Daniel Morrison saved my life," William said simply. "Found me half dead outside Tucson. Nursed me back to health. When I was well enough, he told me about Pa, about the fire. Said he'd been there, seen it all." His voice dropped. "Said he'd saved what he could." The kitchen went silent, except for the crackle of the stove. Samuel felt pieces clicking into place, a pattern emerging from what had seemed like chance. "The letter," he said slowly. "The one you sent with Daniel. Pa got it." William nodded. "Daniel said he delivered it personal. Said Pa was glad to get it, started making plans for when I came home." His face crumpled. 3 weeks later, he was dead. "It wasn't your fault," Clara said firmly. "Daniel told me about those men, how they'd been pressuring your father for months. It would have happened whether you were coming home or not." "She's right," Samuel added, finding his voice. "I've got Pa's journal. He knew they were coming for him. He stayed to protect the ranch, to keep it for us." "Us," William repeated, wonder in his voice. "After all I'd done, all the ways I'd failed him, he still thought of it as ours." Mary spoke for the first time. "That's what fathers do. They hope. They forgive. They wait for their children to find their way home." Samuel looked at his brother older, weathered, but still William underneath. Then at Clara, who'd somehow become the center of his newly complicated world. At the children, both Morrison and Blackwater, who would grow up together on this land. "Welcome home," he said simply. William crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and pulled him into an embrace that erased 15 years in an instant. Samuel returned it fiercely, feeling something broken inside finally beginning to heal. When they separated, both men wiping suspiciously at their eyes. Clara was smiling. "Seems like that partnership agreement is going to need more names on it." "Seems like," Samuel agreed. He looked around the crowded kitchen, his brother and sister-in-law, their son, Clara and her children, all of them connected by threads of loyalty and loss and hope. "Going to need a bigger table, too. And more rooms," William added. "Can't have my family sleeping in the barn." "Your old room's still there. Kept it like you left it." William's eyes filled again. "You kept it all this time." "You're my brother," Samuel said simply. "Where else would you sleep when you came home?" As the night wore on and stories were shared, William's adventures in California, the truth about Daniel's role in their lives, plans for the ranch's future. Samuel felt something he hadn't experienced in a decade. Not just hope, but certainty. The Blackwater Ranch would rise again. Not as it was, but as something new and stronger. Built on the foundation of the past, but reaching toward a future none of them could have imagined when a desperate woman tried to trade a goat for shelter. The legacy, Samuel realized, had never been about land or livestock or even vengeance for the dead. It had always been about this family finding its way home, love growing in unlikely soil, connections that transcended blood and bound them all together. And it had all started with Buttercup, sleeping peacefully in the barn, unaware that she'd carried not just the Blackwater bloodline but their destiny as well. Spring came to the ranch like a blessing, painting the hills green and filling the air with the scent of wildflowers. The expanded household had found its rhythm. William and Mary had taken over the east wing. Young Thomas had become James's shadow, and Emma had declared herself the official keeper of what was now a growing goat herd. Samuel stood at the corral fence, watching Clara work with a new mare. She had a way with horses, gentle but firm. That reminded him of his mother. The afternoon sun caught the auburn in her hair, and he found himself staring longer than was proper. "You going to stand there mooning all day, or help me with this roof?" William called from the barn, laughter in his voice. Samuel turned, scowling without heat. "Wasn't mooning, was thinking about the spring drive." "Sure you were." William climbed down the ladder, wiping his hands on his pants. "Sam, we need to talk about something." The serious tone made Samuel tense. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Maybe too right." William glanced toward Clara. "You're in love with her." Samuel started to deny it, then stopped. What was the point? It's complicated. "Love always is. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "She's still grieving Daniel. And the children have been calling you Uncle Samuel for 2 months now. And Clara." William shook his head. "Brother, that woman looks at you like you hung the moon. Mary says she's just waiting for you to speak up." Samuel felt his collar grow tight. "We're partners, business partners." Business partners don't light up when the other walks in the room. Business partners don't find excuses to brush hands over supper dishes. William's voice gentled. "Sam, you've been alone too long. Don't let fear rob you of this chance." Before Samuel could respond, young Thomas came running, face flushed with excitement. "Uncle Samuel riders coming, lots of them." The brothers exchanged glances and moved quickly toward the house. Samuel counted 8 riders approaching slowly, too many for a social call. His hand found his rifle as William did the same. But as they drew closer, Samuel recognized the lead rider. "That's Ben McKenzie from the Double Bar Ranch." "Neighbor?" William asked. "Of sorts. His spread's north of here. Good man, mostly." Mackenzie dismounted at a respectful distance, his men hanging back. He was a weathered 40, with the straight-backed bearing of former cavalry. "Afternoon, Blackwater. Heard your brother was back." "He is." Samuel kept his tone neutral. "What brings you out this way?" "Mackenzie." "Trouble." The man's face was grim. "Cattlemen's associations making moves again. Heard they're planning to push out the smaller ranches, consolidate the water rights." Samuel's blood ran cold. "Who told you this?" "Man in town. Works for Judge Patterson. Said there's already paperwork drawn up, claiming half the county's wells are on association land." Mackenzie paused. "Including yours." William stepped forward. "Our father died protecting those water rights." Mackenzie nodded slowly. "I heard about that. Sorry, business. Thing is, they've got the judge in their pocket now. Maybe the sheriff, too. Those of us with smaller spreads don't stand a chance alone." "What are you proposing?" Samuel asked, though he suspected he knew. "Alliance. The independent ranchers band together, pool resources. Make it too costly for them to pick us off one by one." Mackenzie's eyes were steady. "I know there's bad blood between you and the association. Figured you might be interested in evening the score. Clara had emerged from the barn, Mary behind her. Both women stood listening, faces carefully neutral. It was Clara who spoke first. "How many ranches are we talking about?" Mackenzie tipped his hat to her. "Ma'am, 7, maybe 8 if the Hendersons join. Not much against the association's money, but we've got good men, good land, and right on our side, for what that's worth." "Right doesn't stop bullets," William observed. "No," Mackenzie agreed, "but it lets you sleep at night." Samuel looked at his brother, then at Clara. Her green eyes were steady, supportive. Whatever he decided, she'd stand with him. "Come inside," he said finally. "We'll talk terms." The meeting stretched through dinner. Maps spread across the kitchen table, voices rising and falling with passion and planning. The children were sent to play, but Samuel noticed James lingering by the door, old enough to understand the gravity of what was being discussed. By the time Mackenzie and his men left, an agreement had been reached. The independent ranchers would support each other, share resources, and present a united front against any association aggression. It wasn't war, not yet, but it was a declaration of intent. "You realize what you've started?" Mary asked after the riders had gone. "Finished," Samuel corrected. "I'm finishing what they started 10 years ago." William poured whiskey for the adults, a rare indulgence. "To justice," he toasted. "To family," Clara added, and Samuel felt her eyes on him as they drank. Later, unable to sleep, Samuel found himself on the porch. The night was warm, full of spring sounds, crickets, an owl, the distant bawl of a calf. Peaceful, but he knew it wouldn't last. Couldn't sleep either. Clara settled beside him, wrapped in a shawl. "Too much thinking. About the association or something else?" He glanced at her, finding her watching him with that direct gaze he'd come to treasure. "William thinks I should court you." The words hung between them, surprising them both. Clara's eyes widened, but she didn't look away. "And what do you think?" she asked softly. "I think—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think you deserve better than a broken-down rancher with more past than future. You deserve someone who can give you a proper home, security, peace." "Samuel Blackwater." Her voice was sharp enough to make him look at her. "I've had a proper home. I've had what passed for security. And peace." She laughed, but it wasn't bitter. "Peace is overrated if you're alone." "Clara." "No, you listen." She turned to face him fully. "You think I don't know my own mind. You think these months have meant nothing. I'm not some green girl looking for romance. I'm a widow with 2 children who's seen enough of life to know what matters." "And what matters?" "This." She gestured to the ranch, the land, the sleeping house. "Building something together. Working side by side, the way you are with my children, the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching." Samuel's heart was pounding. "I don't want to dishonor Daniel's memory." "Daniel," Clara said gently, "would be the first to tell me to grab happiness when I found it. He was practical that way." She reached out, taking his hand. "I'll never stop loving him, never stop being grateful for what we had. But that doesn't mean my heart died with him." Samuel turned her hand over in his, marveling at how small it was, how strong. "If we do this court proper, the children already think of you as family. Emma asked me yesterday when you were going to be her papa." Clara's smile was tremulous. "I told her that was up to you. And James is old enough to understand that loving you doesn't mean loving his father less. He's also old enough to see how happy you make me." Samuel lifted her hand to his lips, a gesture that would have seemed foreign months ago but now felt natural. "Clara Morrison, would you allow me the honor of courting you?" "I thought you'd never ask," she whispered. He drew her closer, and she came willingly, fitting against his side like she belonged there. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, both aware that everything had changed with a few words. The troubles with the association, Clara said eventually. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Probably. You scared? No. She sounded surprised by her own answer. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. All of us, you, me, William and Mary, the children, we're stronger together than apart. Your Daniel was a wise man, choosing you. He was, and so are you. Samuel pressed a kiss to her hair, breathing in the scent of lavender soap and sunshine. Tomorrow would bring challenges, the association, the alliance, the complexities of blending families and hearts. But tonight, with Clara warm against his side and the ranch peaceful around them, he allowed himself to believe in the future. The legacy his father had left wasn't just land and livestock. It was the connections between people, the bonds that turned strangers into family, partners into something more. It was William coming home, the children growing strong, and now this love blooming where he'd least expected it. I should go in, Clara murmured, but made no move to leave. Stay, Samuel said, just a bit longer. So she did, and they watched the night unfold together. Two souls who'd found in each other not a replacement for what was lost, but a promise of what could be. The summer storm rolled in fast and violent, reminding Samuel of that day months ago when Clara first appeared at his door. But this time, he wasn't alone. The whole household worked together, securing shutters and moving livestock to shelter. It was during the height of the tempest that Clara found him in the barn, her face pale and urgent. Samuel, we need to talk, alone. He followed her to the tack room, worry gnawing at him. She'd been quiet all week, distracted. Now, with the wind howling outside, she turned to face him with tears in her eyes. I've been keeping something from you, she began. About Daniel, about the children. Samuel's heart clenched. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. You don't understand. She took a shaky breath. Remember when William said Daniel saved his life outside Tucson? There's more to that story. Daniel didn't just happen upon him. He was looking for him. Looking for William Y. Clara reached into her pocket, withdrawing a letter yellowed with age. Because Thomas, your father, asked him to. This was with the journal, but I was afraid of what it might mean. Samuel took the letter with trembling hands, recognizing his father's script. Daniel, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. The men who want my land won't stop until they have it. I'm sending you to find my boy William. Tell him to stay away. Stay safe. But if something happens to me, tell him this Samuel will need him. The ranch will need both my boys. And Daniel, your boy Michael, is my grandson. William doesn't know he left a child behind when he went to California. The girl, Sarah Hendricks, died birthing him. I've been helping raise the boy as I could, but his mother's family turned bitter. They call him Michael Morrison now. Say he's your nephew. I've let them, to protect him. But he's got Blackwater blood, and someday that should count for something. Keep him safe. Keep them all safe. The letter slipped from Samuel's numb fingers. Clara caught it, her own hands shaking. Michael was William's son, Samuel said slowly. Your husband was my nephew. I didn't know, Clara whispered. Not until after Daniel died. He was delirious with fever, kept talking about promises to keep, about Michael being where he belonged. I thought it was the sickness talking. Then I found this letter. Samuel sank onto a crate, mind reeling. That means James and Emma are your great-nephew and niece, your father's great-grandchildren. Clara knelt beside him. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid you'd think I came here deliberately, that I was after something. Stop! He caught her hands. I know you. Clara, I know your heart. You came here because of a storm and a goat, not because of blood ties you didn't even know existed. But don't you see? Tears spilled down her cheeks. This changes everything. The children aren't just under Blackwater protection, they are Blackwaters. And I've been. She pulled away. I've been falling in love with my children's great-uncle. The words hung between them like a physical presence. Samuel stood slowly, processing everything. Outside, thunder crashed, shaking the barn walls. "Does it change how you feel?" he asked quietly. "Knowing we're connected by blood, even distantly." "I don't know," she admitted. "It feels like everything's been predetermined, like we never had a choice." "We always have choices." He moved closer, not touching, but near enough to feel her warmth. "Your Daniel, my nephew, he made choices. Chose to honor my father's trust. Chose to protect William. Chose to marry you and raise those children with love. None of that was predetermined. And you chose to come here, chose to stay, chose to build something with me before you knew any of this." He risked touching her face, wiping away tears. "I fell in love with you, Clara Morrison, not because of who your husband was or who your children are, but because of who you are." She leaned into his touch. "This is so complicated." "Family always is," Samuel said, echoing William's words from months ago. "Question is, do we let it drive us apart or bring us closer?" Before Clara could answer, the barn door burst open. William stumbled in, soaked and wild-eyed. "Sam Ryder's coming, a lot of them, armed." The moment shattered. Samuel grabbed his rifle, all personal concerns forgotten. "Association. Has to be. Mackenzie's boy rode in, said they hit the double bar at dawn. Ben's dead." Clara gasped. Samuel felt rage, cold and pure, flood through him. Ben Mackenzie had been a good man, a fair man, and now he was dead for standing against the association. "How many?" Samuel demanded. 20, maybe more. They'll be here within the hour." "Get everyone to the house. Board the windows. Mary takes the children to the root cellar." Samuel's mind raced through defensive possibilities. "Where's young Thomas?" "Already moving the horses to the back pasture. That boy's got a good head." They rushed into the storm, the rain driving sideways now. As they reached the house, Samuel caught Clara's arm. "Whatever happens, protect the children. They're what matters." "Samuel Blackwater, don't you dare say goodbye to me." Her eyes flashed. "We're not done with our conversation." Despite everything, he almost smiled. "No, we're not. But right now we defend our home. All of us, together." She lifted her chin. "I can shoot. Clara, those children in the cellar, they're Blackwater's. You just said so. That makes this their fight too. I won't hide while you face danger." There was no time to argue. The riders were visible now through the rain, dark shapes against the gray sky. Samuel counted them 22 men, all armed, led by a figure he recognized with a surge of hatred. Judge Patterson himself, come to finish what he'd started 10 years ago. "Blackwater," the judge's voice carried over the storm. "Come out and talk terms." "Terms," William spat. "Only terms they know come from a gun barrel." Samuel stepped onto the porch, rifle ready but not raised. Clara positioned herself at the window, William at the other. Inside, he could hear Mary hushing the children, her voice steady despite the fear she must feel. "Patterson," Samuel called back. "You're trespassing." "Not for long." The judge smiled, a cold thing that didn't reach his eyes. "You've been stirring up trouble, Blackwater, getting the smaller ranches to band together. Can't have that. Free country. Free men can associate as they please. Not when they're interfering with legal business interests." Patterson produced a paper from his coat. "I've got a deed here says this land belongs to the Cattlemen's Association, bought from the territorial government after Thomas Blackwater died intestate." Liar William stepped out beside Samuel. "Our father had a will. This ranch goes to his sons." Patterson's eyes widened slightly at seeing William, but he recovered quickly. "A will no one can find. Court ruled him intestate. This deed is legal." "Legal as the fire that killed him." Samuel's voice was deadly quiet. The judge's men shifted nervously. Patterson himself went still. "That's a dangerous accusation, Blackwater." "It's not an accusation. It's a promise. I know what you did, who was involved, and I've got proof. Dead men tell no tales, but their journals do." Samuel let that sink in. Every meeting, every threat, every name, all written down in Thomas Blackwater's own hand, safe in the bank in Austin, along with witness testimony. It was a bluff the journal was upstairs, and Daniel was the only witness, long dead, but Patterson didn't know that. "You're lying." "Am I? You willing to bet your neck on it?" Samuel raised his rifle now, not quite pointing it, but ready. "Because that's what we're talking about. Murder charges, hanging charges." The storm seemed to pause, holding its breath. Samuel could feel Clara tense behind him. William coiled to spring, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then Emma's voice, high and frightened, cut through the tension. "Uncle Samuel." She'd escaped the cellar somehow, was running across the yard toward the house. One of Patterson's men, spooked, swung his gun toward the movement. Time slowed. Samuel saw the gun rise, saw his own rifle swinging to meet it, knew he'd be too late. Then Clara was flying past him, no weapon but her own fierce motherhood, throwing herself toward her daughter. The gunshot was impossibly loud, even over the thunder. But it was Patterson who fell, clutching his shoulder. William stood smoking gun in hand, face carved from stone. "Anyone else wants to point a gun at a child? Speak up now." The moment shattered into chaos. Some of Patterson's men went for their guns, others backed away. Samuel shot the man who'd threatened Emma, saw him spin and fall. Clara had reached her daughter, was pulling her to safety as bullets flew. It was over in seconds that felt like hours. When the gun smoke cleared, 3 men were down, including Patterson. The rest were backing away, hands raised, wanting no more part of this. "Take your judge and go," Samuel commanded. "Tell the association that Blackwater Ranch stands ready. We've got the proof, we've got the will to use it, and now we've got blood debt to collect." They loaded Patterson, moaning but alive, onto his horse. As they fled into the storm, William turned to Samuel. "That journal better be as good as you made it sound." "It is. And now we've got wounded men as witnesses. Self-defense. All of it." Samuel looked around, checking everyone. Clara, Emma. They emerged from behind the water trough, muddy but unharmed. Clara's eyes met his, and in them he saw everything: fear, relief, determination, and yes, love. Complicated or not, predetermined or not, it was there. "Inside," he ordered. "All of us. This isn't over." As they gathered in the kitchen, Emma clinging to her mother, James pale but trying to be brave. Samuel made a decision. "William, you and young Thomas ride to Austin tomorrow. Take the journal, file it with the authorities. Real authorities, not local ones." He looked at Clara. "You and the children go with them. It's not safe here." "No." Clara's voice was quiet but firm. "We've had this discussion. This is our home, our fight." "Clara." "No, Samuel." She stood, still holding Emma. "You said the children are Blackwaters. Well, Blackwaters don't run. Your father didn't. Daniel didn't. We won't." "Mama's right," James said, young voice steady. "This is our land too." Samuel looked at them, this strange, wonderful, complicated family that had formed around him. William and Mary, young Thomas growing into a man before their eyes. Clara with her quiet strength, the children brave beyond their years. His father would have been proud. "All right," he said finally. "We make our stand together." Clara moved to him then, Emma still in her arms. "Together," she repeated, and he knew she meant more than just the fight ahead. Whatever came next, trials, confrontations, the slow work of justice, they would face it as a family. The secret was out now, all of it. The blood ties that connected them, the choices that bound them, the love that had grown despite or because of it all. The storm was passing, leaving the air clean and new, and in this kitchen where it had all begun. Samuel Blackwater pulled his family close and began to plan for the future, their future. Complicated and dangerous and absolutely worth fighting for. The wildflowers were in full bloom the day Samuel Blackwater married Clara Morrison. The meadow behind the ranch house had been transformed into an outdoor chapel, with ribbons fluttering from the cottonwood trees and benches borrowed from every neighboring ranch. It seemed the whole county had turned out, even those who'd kept their distance during the troubles with the association. 6 months had passed since that violent storm. Judge Patterson had survived his wound only to face trial in Austin, where Thomas Blackwater's journal proved damning. The Cattlemen's Association had crumbled under legal scrutiny, its leaders scattered or jailed. The water rights were secure, the ranch prosperous, and for the first time in over a decade. Samuel felt peace, but no peace compared to this moment, watching Clara walk toward him through the wildflowers, Emma scattering rose petals before her while James walked proudly at her side. She wore her mother's wedding dress, altered by Mary's clever fingers, and carried a bouquet of the yellow buttercups that had started it all. William stood as his best man, grinning broadly. "Nervous, little brother." "Terrified," Samuel admitted, then smiled. "Best kind of terrified there is?" The ceremony was simple, officiated by Reverend Martinez, who'd ridden 2 days to be there when he asked who gave this woman in marriage. It was James who spoke up, clear and strong. "Her children do, with the blessing of our Father in heaven." Clara's eyes glistened, but her smile never wavered as she took Samuel's hands. "Clara," Samuel began, his prepared words forgotten, "you came to my door in a storm, offering to trade a goat for shelter, but you brought so much more. You brought life back to this place, to me. You showed me that the past doesn't have to define the future, that family isn't just about blood but about choice. I choose you, Clara, today, tomorrow, always." Clara's voice was steady despite her tears. "Samuel, you gave us shelter when we had nothing, protection when we were vulnerable, and love when we thought our hearts had no room for more. You honored my husband's memory while showing me I could love again. You became a father to my children before you knew they carried your blood. I choose you too, with all my heart." When Reverend Martinez pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in the next county. Emma broke from Mary's hold and ran to them, wrapping her arms around both their legs. "Now you're really my papa," she declared, causing laughter and more than a few tears among the guests. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by every family Mexican specialties from the Hernandez Ranch. Irish stew from the O'Briens, cornbread and beans from a dozen kitchens, the Mackenzie widow, her grief still fresh but her spirit unbowed, had brought Ben's fiddle, and soon music filled the air. Samuel found a moment of quiet, standing at the edge of the celebration, watching it all. Clara found him there, slipping her hand into his. "No regrets?" she asked softly. "Only that it took so long to get here." "Maybe it took exactly as long as it needed to." She leaned against him, fitting perfectly against his side. "Samuel, there's something I need to tell you." He turned, concerned by her serious tone. "What is it?" "I wanted to wait until today, until we were truly married." She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "By spring, Emma and James will have a brother or sister." Samuel's world tilted, then righted itself in a new configuration. We're having a baby." Her smile was radiant. "A new Blackwater for the ranch." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. When he set her down, he was crying unashamedly. "A baby. Our baby." "Our baby," she confirmed. "Though I should warn you, if it's a boy. James has already put in a request to teach him to ride before he can walk. And Emma has declared that girl or boy, The baby will need to learn proper goat husbandry." Clara's eyes danced. "Apparently Buttercup's expecting too. It's quite the fertile spring at Blackwater Ranch." Samuel laughed, the sound rich and full. His father would have loved the ranch alive with children, the goat lines continuing, the land secure for future generations. William appeared at his elbow, young Thomas and James trailing behind. "Mary says if you two are done being romantic, it's time for the toasts." They gathered around the head table as the sun set in spectacular fashion, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. William raised his glass first. "To my brother, who kept faith when I couldn't, who held on to this land and our father's dream even when it nearly killed him, and to Clara, who brought us all back together." He grinned. "And to Buttercup, the goat that started it all." The toast was echoed with laughter and cheers. Others followed, neighbors sharing memories of Thomas Blackwater, friends praising the couple's courage during the troubles, Mary welcoming Clara officially as a sister. Then Mackenzie's widow stood, frail but determined. "My Ben died standing against tyranny," she said quietly. "But his death wasn't in vain. It brought justice, and it showed us all what we're capable of when we stand together." To the Blackwaters, who reminded us that legacy isn't just about what we leave behind, but what we build together. As the stars came out and lanterns were lit, Samuel and Clara took to the makeshift dance floor. He wasn't much of a dancer, but with Clara in his arms, it didn't matter. "I love you, Mrs. Blackwater," he murmured against her hair. "And I love you, Mr. Blackwater," she replied, "even if you are stepping on my feet." "Sorry," but he wasn't. Not really. Every clumsy step was a celebration, every stumble a joy. He was dancing at his own wedding with a woman he adored, surrounded by family and friends, on land that was secure for generations to come. Later, as the celebration wound down and guests began departing with promises to visit soon, Samuel found himself back at the corral where it had all begun. The moon was rising, casting silver light over the ranch. Buttercup stood placidly in her pen, looking remarkably content for an animal who'd inadvertently changed so many lives. Clara appeared beside him, still in her wedding dress but with his jacket around her shoulders. "What are you thinking?" "About my father, about how he sent Daniel to protect William, how that led to Michael, to you, to all of this." He shook his head in wonder. He couldn't have known how it would all work out, but somehow he set it all in motion. "The legacy," Clara said softly. "It wasn't just the land or the bloodlines. It was the connections, the faith people kept with each other." "That goat holds my legacy," Samuel quoted, remembering his first words when Clara had tried to trade Buttercup for shelter. "I thought I was talking about breeding lines and brand marks. But the real legacy was you, the children, the future." Clara turned in his arms, her face luminous in the moonlight. "Then it's a good thing I didn't take no for an answer." "The best thing," he agreed, and kissed his bride as the night wind carried the scent of wildflowers and the promise of rain. In the house, their family slept, William and Mary, young Thomas, James, and Emma. Soon there would be another voice added to the chorus, another Blackwater to carry on the tradition. The ranch would grow. The challenges would come, but they would face them together. And somewhere in her pen, Buttercup the goat chewed her cud contentedly, unaware that she had been the thread that wove it all together, a scrawny, storm-bedraggled creature who had carried not just the Blackwater brand, but their destiny. The legacy lived on, not in the land or the livestock, but in the love that filled a once-empty house, in the children who would grow strong on this soil, in the community that had learned to stand together. It lived in every sunrise over the ranch, every wildflower that bloomed, every new life that entered the world. And it had all started with a desperate woman, 2 frightened children, and a goat named Buttercup, seeking shelter from a storm and finding so much more. The Blackwater Ranch stood ready for whatever came next. its legacy secured not by documents or deeds, but by the bonds of family chosen and blood, complicated and beautiful, stronger than any storm. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Samuel and Clara's journey as much as I enjoyed telling it. Where are you listening from today? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know where in the world this tale of the Old West has reached. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more authentic frontier stories. And let me know your thoughts about Samuel and Clara's romance. Did you see that revelation about Michael coming? What was your favorite moment? Your comments mean the world to me.